My grandmother was a portrait painter. She was twice divorced, and she went down to Guatemala in the 1930s, and she was an eminent portrait painter from Boston. She painted life-size portraits of Mayan Indians, chiefs in priests in purple robes. It was fantastic. She came back, and I was 8 years old, and she gave me some art lessons. And she had a still life set up, and it was a silver candlestick. She wanted me to get every single one of those highlights exactly right. And I wasn't turned off. She was a taskmaster and a slave driver, but I knew I would become a painter. Painting for me is like breathing, and it's an internal need to do so. It's absolutely essential to my well-being. Even my kids would say, "Mom, you better go paint. You're in such a cranky mood." And they were right. They understood that right off. My father was a physician, and he built boats, and I helped him, and we went fishing and fished most of the rivers off of waters off of Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard, and I just loved that. And he raised orchids, and so a deep interest in the natural sciences. So when I went to college, I knew I would be majoring in the sciences, and that's been a great boon to my painting. And I'm still such a student of nature and in so much awe of the natural world. And it's a big part of my life. There's nothing like a walk in the woods. I didn't want to study art in the collegiate setting. I took plenty of history of art, plenty of philosophy, but not any studio work. I was going to save that to be in an art school. And I'm glad I did. So I had 1 year in art school when I was 26, and the rest has been self-taught. And I've lived in Japan. These are some of the influences that were great, not only that, but because my family gave me really so much permission to do what I did. My grandfather had been a designer for the America's Cup, had designed 3 winners. His father before him had designed 3, so from 1880 till 1940, the Burgess family was designing international yachts, racing, and involved in that. And my grandfather had designed airplanes in competition with Curtiss and Wright, and he designed a 3-wheel car called the Dymaxion with Buckminster Fuller, and he exchanged mathematical formulae with Einstein in Princeton, New Jersey, in a 1-room schoolhouse. They wrote mathematical formulae on the board all day. So I had lots of permission in my family. My aunt was an illustrator of children's books, Tasha Tudor, and so being an artist was natural to me. And my aunt used to say, "Well, Mary is going to be an artist," and I had hardly hefted a pencil, you know. But I just knew, and I committed to painting. And then I had children and lived in Japan, where my children were born, for 3 years. I had been in Kennedy's Peace Corps, the first group out the door, setting up a laboratory in a 100-bed hospital on the border between Thailand and Malaysia. And that was exciting. So 2 years in the Peace Corps and then 3 years in Japan. And in Japan, that really set my aesthetic. I studied woodblock printmaking, and just the austerity of Zen, the stripped downness, the simplicity appealed to me. Their love of materials for their own sake, not just like straw, bamboo, and unlacquered, unadorned. And it was really a marvelous experience. And I culminated my exhibiting in the Tokyo National Museum with 200 other woodblock artists. Came back to the States when the kids were 8 and 9, faced divorce. I got my ankles back in graduate school in landscape architecture, which was really applied science, and I was interested in the environmental field, and did work in wetlands restoration, mitigation, enhancement, and went down to Brazil to collect information for my master's thesis. So, but I'm still doing the art. I'd had a major show at a gallery in Seattle, and I still was going to do that. And so I committed when I got laid off from doing the environmental work, finally, the last time, and within 24 hours had this studio and never looked back. I had a kid at home, a mortgage to pay, and I had 6 weeks unemployment, and I didn't know where the next nickel was coming from. But I'm glad I made that commitment. And barreling down some suicidal path, I just said, no, painting is going to be #1. I'm not going to let anything get in the way of that. Every job, part-time I chose or whatever, would support the fact that painting was #1. So, and I certainly don't have any regrets on that score. But it takes that kind of focus and discipline to do that. What are you willing to give up? 5 hours of watching TV or the family silver? What is it that you're going to give up? Yes, but when you're really clear about what it is you want to do, it's like a laser and it cuts through everything.